things that's going to help keep you rooted and grounded in the Word of God. And in times of trouble, when David and them fell into bad times, he always saw him still holding on firm. David was chased by Saul 10 years, but he never spoke ill against his leader. You can be in church for 10 years, but then you got something to say about how the pastor runs things, or the kind of decisions that the pastor makes, or the kind of appeals that the pastor makes. But are you connected to duty like you're supposed to be? He saw families, all the families of his whole army kidnapped. And in the midst of all of that, duty arose in him. And he was able to go out and to pursue, overtake, and without fail, recover all. So all of these stories, he's telling Solomon. And he's saying, this is what you do. This is how you do it. And he's giving him a real live example, a close-up personal example of what's supposed to be going on. Then number 3, Solomon learned duty by being trained in actual case setting. Right there. He was standing with David, learning how to do kingdom work. The kingdoms were divided. One kingdom here, one kingdom here. But Solomon saw how his father brought the 2 kingdoms together. He watched his father. His father had promised him, son, you're going to be king. Son, you're next in line. And when his father got old and his brother got crazy, Solomon saw his father keep his word and make him the king. He fixed this thing so well. He had a coronation, and he made it so that the coronation was close to where his brother's Adonijah's coronation was going to be, so that when they blew the trumpet, he could hear. And they could hear all the cheering. They could hear all the noise. And he saw, oh no, I'm in trouble now. But Solomon saw this. He's teaching them and training him in actual case setting. He saw his father tell him, when you become king, don't forget about this person here. That Joab and that Shimei and your brother Adonijah. Don't forget about them. Use wisdom on them. He's still teaching them and training them. So Solomon was able to move through and learn the lessons that he needed to be the total man. Now, I talked with this morning somebody that was from the military. And I wanted to find out from a military perspective what it meant to be on duty. And so I was talking with this person, and he was telling me, he said, well, I don't know much about duty. He said, because I wasn't really connected like that. You know, I didn't listen to my superiors. He said, but I can tell you about guard duty. That's what tell me about that. So he said, we were on guard duty, and we were out there in the field. And it was 20 degrees with a 55-degree wind chill factor. And he said they would select the people that would be on guard duty. And that person was responsible to keep the fire going all through the night. So they're in this tent, they got a fire going, and the guy gets a little sleepy, and he lets the fire go out. Well, he wakes up and he sees the fire out, but he didn't tell anybody that the fire was out. He went and climbed in his sleeping bag and went to sleep. They're out there in freezing cold weather. So the next morning, when they call all of the battalions, a battalion is missing. And so when they go searching for them, out there in those sleeping bags are people that just about froze to death. He said he was in big trouble because he didn't fulfill his duty the way he was supposed to. And so man had a responsibility. He had lives in his charge, lives in his care. And as Christians, we have lives that are in our care. There are names that are written for Deacon Cromati, and there's names that are written for Reverend Pitts, and there are names that are written for Deaconess Ladler, and there are names that are written for Sister Paula, that you are supposed to witness to, that you are supposed to do follow-up on, that you are supposed to nurture in the way of the Lord, in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. But are we doing that? When Reverend Chester was talking today and he said, do you have time? That was so profound. Because when I was saved, people took time to come by my house and to ask me, what did you read today? All right. This is what I read today. And they were encouraging me. They were making sure that I was staying with it. Because sometimes people do get saved and stay saved for a week. Maybe they told you 2 weeks. Maybe you didn't make it 2 weeks. Because there was somebody that was supposed to be on duty that wasn't doing their duty. Well, this man had to go to the hospital, and he was in the hospital for 8 days. They thought they were going to have to amputate his feet because his feet got that cold. Imagine you're on duty, and that thing happens. Well, I talked to another soldier, and this guy had been in the military for 20 years. So he had a little bit better perspective about duty. So he told me, I said, well, what is it? What is it that the Army says that makes these guys feel like they are duty-bound to serve for their country? He said, well, you know, he said, they keep telling you over and over that you are selected to serve your country, and what a high honor that is, and how you have to do it. I said, but how long does it take for you to get like that? He said, well, what happens, you go through basic training, and that's about, I think, 6 to 8 weeks. After basic training, then you still have to be in there for 3 years. And when he said 3 years, I said, wow. Because Jesus worked with his disciples for 3 years. He said, in 3 years' time, you develop a sense of duty. And then after that, you can re-enlist. And so he kept re-enlisting until he got 20 years in, because he learned what duty was. Duty, being willing to put your life on the line, being willing to go out into the field. And they were in battle combat. They were just in training in 20-degree weather. So isn't it ironic that Jesus kept his disciples in training for the 3 years that he was here on earth? And even with that, he had to pray for Peter that his faith fail not. Well, number 4, Solomon had to do it on his own. So after David had trained him, after he worked with him through his teenage years, and after he's gone all through and put all these things in him, here he is. He has to run the kingdom. What does he do on the first day when he has to dedicate the temple? He goes and he prays, because he has the kind of heart that a person who has duty, who has allegiance, who feels obligation has. And he prayed, he said, he didn't pray, Lord, make me a rich king. Lord, make me a famous king. He said, Lord, give me the heart that I can guide this, so great thy people. And because of that, he was able to be that total man. He was able to stay connected with God. He was able to stay connected with his family. He was able to stay connected with the community.